Part 35. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 344. In fact, if Bayou wants to get out, this kind of cell can't contain him at all. He can't even bear a punch in this kind of cell. Gurgula. Luffy's stomach growled at this time. Wow, I'm so hungry. I'm really hungry. When will dinner be served? Luffy complained. It's just that this is a prison, and you can't eat what you want now. But Bayou was prepared. He took out a few fairy beans from his pocket and handed them to Luffy. Although this kind of thing is it's the size of a bean, but you'll be full after eating it. Although it has no taste, this is a special period. Under normal circumstances, Luffy would definitely not eat this when he's hungry. After all, the thigh meat and the wine, doesn't he smell good? Bayou, how long do you think they will detain us? Robin said as he looked around at their situation. I think we'll know the answer soon. As soon as Bayou finished speaking, there were footsteps coming from the entrance of the cell in the distance. As the footsteps got closer and closer, the chief's figure appeared in front of everyone. After seeing this chief with a certain appearance, everyone at this time, their expressions were not very good. After all, in their opinion, this chief was imprisoned by them for no reason. They had saved their tribe, so they were kind to them after all. Can you really treat datura flower poison? After watching the people in the cell for a few seconds, the chief said. At this time, the chief's tone seemed not as cold as before, but still serious. Of course, I believe Lilam has told you the whole thing, dear your majesty the chief. We are not bad people, we are just passing adventurers who happen to pass by this island. Robin looked at the female chief and said sincerely. She could see from the female chief's eyes that this female chief was not bad. Standing after pacing for a moment in front of the cell, the female chief left. Hey, let us out. Seeing the female chief leaving like this, Luffy was a little angry, and he subconsciously started to pull on the fence. With this pull, the effect of the sea tower stone was activated again, and Luffy went limp again. The cell became quiet. In the hall, the female chief was talking to Lilam. Mother, the Straw Hats are really not bad people. They did save me. I can promise you that they will not harm us or do anything to harm our tribe. On the contrary, they can save our tribe. I remember when I was very young, didn't you say that humans are a very good race? Why do you hate humans so much now? Lilam was very puzzled as to why her mother had undergone such a change. That's enough, don't say any more, and don't worry about this anymore. I will make my own decision. After the female chief said these words, she walked out of the hall and came to the street. It was already afternoon, because the arrival of Bayou and others also made the people on the street feel panic. Most of them they have never seen human beings. At most, they have seen records in ancient books. This time they were shocked to see real people. Of course, they were also scared. They didn't know what the purpose of these human beings was and whether they would pose a threat to them. This dwarf tribe can no longer withstand any blow. When they see the female chief, everyone will greet them warmly. Among them, there are some civilians who have been poisoned by datura flowers. This poison is very common in the dwarf tribe. It is very common, but it cannot be treated. Almost every day, people are poisoned by this flower. This is because the dwarf tribe is surrounded by this poisonous flower. Every time there is a dwarf who wants to go out, more or less everyone will touch datura flowers. As for whether they are poisoned or not, it actually depends on luck. This toxin is a chronic toxin and will not cause death immediately, but will slowly spread from the infected area over time, and the pain will gradually intensify, and eventually the poison will spread all over the body, and the poisoned person will die from the poison. The dead dwarf will be very painful in the last moments. The female chief saw that the poison had reached the neck like the dwarf tribesman he was greeting, and she couldn't bear it, but there is nothing that can be done about it. When the poison reaches this point, the next step is the brain. It can take as long as 3 days or as little as 1 day, and the dwarf in front of him will die. This is like being given an ultimatum, but he is still alive and strong. At this time the female chief suddenly heard what her daughter had just said to her. Can those straw hats really save our people? Can they really lead us out of this datura flower scare? Thinking of this, she no longer hesitated. Now she could no longer hesitate. No matter whether it was true or not, she could only give it a try. She realized that every second she hesitated, there might be someone else because of Mandala. The dwarf tribe member collapsed due to an attack of flower toxin. She did not want to and could not see this happen again. In the cell, Chopper looked in the direction of the door with despair. Bayou, Luffy, Robin, we won't be locked up here for the rest of our lives. I don't want to stay here for the rest of my life. I still have a great dream that has not been realized. As he said this, Chopper was about to cry. Don't worry, this female chief will be back soon, Bayou said confidently. Sure enough, the next second, the door was opened again, and this time it was the female chief who came back. I can let you out, but you must agree to a few conditions, the female chief said decisively. Tell me. Bayou narrowed his eyes and looked at the female chief and said. I need you to save our people who are infected by datura flowers, and I need you to leave the treatment formula. The female chief looked at Bayou firmly, then glanced at the people behind Bayou and said. What do we get? Bayou said calmly. After all, we did treat your tribe before, and Lilam should be your daughter. Bayou's eyes were blazing. Hearing what Bayou said, the female chief was obviously stunned. You know, Lilam didn't do it before. Talking about her relationship with the female chief, how did Bayou know about it, and they were already in prison? Since the man in front of her still dared to negotiate terms with her. There is no free lunch in the world, and I think you also know that since you want us to save your people, you must pay a corresponding price. Bayou continued. After hesitating for a moment, the female chief seemed to have figured it out and said, whatever you want, tell me. As long as it's not too much, I can satisfy it. Now she has no choice. She must get the datura flowers treatment formula. Only in this way can the people of the tribe feel at ease. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 345. We need your casting skills. Of course we will exchange them for medical skills, and we will also help you deal with the datura flower poison from your tribe. Actually, Bayou has long been interested in the casting technology of this dwarf tribe. As early as when he came to this tribe, he knew that the craftsmanship of this tribe was extraordinary. Whether it was the decoration of the houses or the weapons of the soldiers, they were all it is very sophisticated. Obviously few humans can do this. At that time, he was thinking that if Frankie could come over to learn a skill, maybe their technology could rise to another level. This is the real reason why Bayou doesn't have a head-on conflict with the dwarves, is that only cooperation can achieve a win-win situation. Force can't solve everything. Moreover, he can see from the eyes of the female chief that their tribe is not a people who are greedy for life and afraid of death. They really fight. If he got up, although he was confident that he could win, it would be meaningless. After thinking for a moment, the chief agreed. Now for her, datura poison is the top priority. Happy cooperation. Bayou stretched his hand out of the gap in the cell door to shake hands with the female chief. This move also made the female chief look at the man in front of her with admiration. She knew that the bars in these cells were all special. In order to restrict those with human abilities, they were all used the sea tower stone, but it was obvious that the man just touched the sea tower stone, but there was no reaction, which means that the man is not a fruit ability user. However, the female chief did not show anything, and directly asked the guards to release a few people. Come out. Luffy was so happy to be free again. He kept moving his muscles and started jumping up and down. Please keep your promise. Of course, I will keep my promise, but this must be after you fulfill your promise, the female chief said again. No problem, Chopper, I leave it to you. Bayou said to Chopper, who was standing behind him. He knew nothing about medical skills, so he could only rely on Chopper for this. Don't worry, everyone, datura flowers are not scary. I will complete the task soon. After that, they followed the female chief. They came to the street. After the people on the street saw the female chief, they still had the same reaction, that is, bowing. But when they saw the few humans brought by the female chief, they were all stunned. For a moment, but this time they did not run away, because the female chief was here, and they knew that these humans could not hurt them. Okay, let me announce something to you. These are the doctors we invited to treat our poisoning caused by datura flowers. I hope you can actively cooperate with their work, and everyone will get better. Yes, datura flower toxins are not terrible, we will defeat them in the future. The exciting speech had obviously aroused the fighting spirit of the dwarves. Only then did Bayou realize that there were quite a few people on the street who had been poisoned by datura flowers. They were in twos and threes and of all ages. At this moment, he finally understood why the female chief had compromised. There was no other way, Mandala. Luo's influence on their tribe was so great that she had to compromise. Okay, distinguished guests, let's get started. After that, the female chief took them to a shack that had been set up. This will be the place where you will work in the next few days. I will ask all the tribesmen who have been poisoned by datura flowers to come here for treatment. Of course, before that, I hope you will not run around. After all, these tribesmen may not be fully recovered yet. I accept you, I hope you can understand. No problem, but we have to prepare enough wine and meat. I'm really hungry. Luffy touched his stomach. At this time, his stomach started to growl for some reason. No problem, let's get started now. The guards began to make preparations in an orderly manner, arranging for those who had been poisoned by datura to start queuing up for treatment. Soon, a long line formed, and Lilam also came over to help. In the female chief, the moment she agreed to release the Straw Hats, she received the news and rushed over immediately. Let me help you. Although I don't know how to treat it, I can bandage it for you. Lilam is very happy now. Her mother's willingness to release them is an affirmation of them. In her opinion, this is also her mother's trust in her in disguise. She feels that her promise is still effective with her mother. As the queue is getting longer and longer, and Chopper has also begun treatment. The treatment method is also very simple. Use a silver needle to bleed, and then let the slug suck out the remaining toxins, then treat, and then apply medicine. In fact, for Chopper, he said that this so-called datura flower poison is just an ordinary poison. You only need to treat the wound and apply ordinary poison-repelling powder. Of course, he had prepared these poison-repelling powders early in the morning. In one afternoon. In a short time, they have treated most of the tribesmen. The faces of those who have been treated are obviously much better, and even the severe pain that has been bothering them before is gone. They feel refreshed, and some even kneel down directly. They came down and kowtowed to the Straw Hats. In their view, curing datura flower poison for them was the benefactor who gave them a second life. Since childhood, in their concept, datura flower is the evil flowers from hell will deprive the dwarves of their lives. Once they are infected, they will be close to death. This is God's punishment for them. But now, they are saved and no longer tortured by the poison. This is for them, nothing is more joyful than this. The female chief watched the whole treatment process. To be honest, she was still a little uneasy. After all, these outsiders had not gained enough trust from her, but as the treatment was completed, the number of people is increasing, and the wariness of the female chief towards the Straw Hats is slowly disappearing. The night is gradually getting darker, and the female chief has also given an order to continue working tomorrow. After all, the night is still very scary for the dwarves. Yes, the dwarf tribe stipulates that you cannot leave your house at night. This also does not give the night devils a chance. Why don't they light the lamp yet? Luffy said, looking at the sky that was gradually getting darker. The light was getting darker and darker, and at this time the guard came over. Could you please come with me? After saying that, he led the way. Although it was night, the dwarves' eyesight was very good. They could see things clearly at night, but Luffy and the others couldn't. They could only fumble around with the help of the weak moonlight. Soon, they arrived at their residence, and then the torch was lit. Sorry, distinguished guests, because of tribal regulations, there are no fire lights outside the house at night. This is mainly to prevent night demons from taking advantage. This is where you will rest. As for food, someone will send it over. After saying all this, the guard walked out. But when he walked out, the torch he was holding was extinguished by him. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 346. When Bayou saw the guard's behavior, he was full of curiosity at this time, but now was not the time. After all, this was the tribe's rule, and they were now in a cooperative relationship with the tribe, so they had to respect their traditions, but Bayou decided, before leaving the island, he had to figure out what this so-called night devil was. The room was large and the decoration inside was also very luxurious. It looked like a hotel. To their surprise, there was hot water and a simple shower. This made Bayou very surprised. He had never seen a shower before in this world. This was his first time, and it seemed that this technology was quite mature. Seeing this, Bayou became even more curious about the technology and craftsmanship of the dwarves. This is really a magical place. Bayou, you said we made a deal with them, will they default on the debt later? Robin came to Bayou and said. Bayou was fascinated by the technology of these dwarves. The more he explored, the more he felt that this dwarf tribe was not simple. Bayou, Robin was stunned when he saw Bayou's expression. She didn't know the shower. In her opinion, the shower might be just a decoration. Robin would not think it was a place to take a bath. Oh, I don't think they are so stupid. I think that female chief is a smart person. She will not take risks and make fun of the safety of her people. Besides, even if they regret it, do you think they can do anything to us with their force? Chu Feng looked at Robin and said with a smile. At this moment, Luffy and Chopper had already begun to fall asleep. For them, they must be very tired today, and these two heartless people would not think there are some of these. After they finish their daily work, they can rest. This is their idea. It is very simple. Robin, you know, this is a place for bathing. Bayou pointed to the shower head-like device and said. After Bayou said this, Robin also became interested. She had never seen this so-called shower. In fact, she had seen it at first, but she thought this is a decoration. After all, the dwarves have decorations almost everywhere, as if they are deliberately showing off their craftsmanship. There is a place to take a bath, but there is no bathtub here, and where does the water come from? Robin said after looking at the facilities inside. This was a bit beyond her knowledge. After all, in the world of One Piece, she had never seen a shower, and every time she took a bath, she used a bathtub. As for the water, it was all boiled and poured in. Seeing that Robin really didn't know, Bayou went up to demonstrate and turned the switch. Sure enough, water came out, and it was still hot water. You see, this way there will be hot water. Robin was very surprised when he saw that hot water actually came out. You should take a shower first. It's been a tiring day. Don't worry, I will watch over you from outside. The bathroom is quite user-friendly and is covered by a screen, so as long as Chu Feng is watching from outside, there is no need to worry. Okay, then I'll try. This was Robin's first time to use a shower, and she was full of curiosity. Half an hour later, Robin walked out with wet hair. There were still water droplets on her pretty face that was red due to the moisture, and it was very strange. It was touching. This made Bayu couldn't help but want to go up and kiss him. Seeing Bayu's actions, Robin did not dodge, but closed his eyes. This kiss was like an electric shock. Bayu, Robin, why aren't you sleeping yet? Aren't you tired? Suddenly, Luffy's voice came from the distant room, which shocked the two of them, as if two people having an affair were discovered. Well, just fell asleep, Bayu responded casually. But what he didn't know was that Luffy was actually talking in his sleep. He didn't wake up at all. This episode also directly affected the two of them. After the two looked at each other and smiled, after Bayu kissed Robin again, he went in to take a shower. A few people woke up at noon the next day. The reason for waking up was because Luffy was hungry and was asking for food everywhere. When he walked out of the door, he realized that he had eaten early. Has been prepared. These dwarves were pretty smart and didn't bother us even though they knew we would be sleeping in because of this. Bayu has a better impression of these dwarves. The way these dwarves treat guests is still acceptable. After a few people walked out of the room, there were already guards waiting outside the door. After all, it was noon, and they were waiting today. It's time to start the mission. It's still the same as yesterday, arriving at the same place yesterday. But this first patient seems to be unusual. He is an old man who was forcibly carried over by several guards. The old man was wearing armor, although his hair was gray, but his eyes were still bright. Bayu only took one look and knew that this old man was different from ordinary dwarves. He was probably some kind of leader. Chief Renekton, this is the chief's order. All people who have been poisoned by datura flower must be treated. Seeing that the old man refused to obey, the guards who were holding him had no choice but to bring out the chief to persuade him. In the dwarf tribe, the chief's order is an absolute order and cannot be resisted. Hearing this, the man named Lei only then did the old man from Khitan calm down. I don't believe that anyone in this world can really cure the poison produced by the evil flower, which is God's punishment for sinners like us. Although the old man was walking towards them, he still kept mumbling something. After getting closer, Bayu discovered that the old man's whole body had turned purple, which meant that he had been hit by a mandala flower. It should have been a long time, but what surprised him was that even so, the old man could still walk like a normal person. You know, he had seen Lilam's condition before. Even if the toxin only reached the calf, it could make her unable to stand. Obviously, the old man in front of her was unusual. When Bayu looked at the old man's eyes also looked like Bayu's. With just one glance, the old man was stunned, and then he became thoughtful. But he didn't say anything. Just like that, he came to Chopper. He still followed the usual routine. Although the old man's condition was already very bad, in Chopper's eyes, this was nothing. During the day yesterday, he having thoroughly researched this so-called flower of hell, Chopper is confident that he can bring back those who have been poisoned by this poison. Of course, this is also thanks to the slugs Bayu gave Chopper. For some reason, slugs have a strong purifying effect on this toxin. Coupled with Chopper's self-developed medicine, this toxin is simply vulnerable. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 347. Is it them? The old man looked at Bayu and others in the shack and said. Yes, Chief Lei. They are the doctors invited by the chief. After hearing what the guard said, the old man sat directly in front of Chopper. Then see if I can be saved. The old man's expression was calm when he said this, giving the first impression that he didn't care about the harm this so-called mandala flower caused to his body. Although the old man looked very old, he was in good spirits. If not seeing that his hair was already full of white, no one could tell his age. Chopper still pricked the old man's arm with a silver needle just like he did with other dwarves. The old man's condition was very serious, and now the poison had spread all over his body. Chopper deduced that without their arrival, the old man might not have survived for less than a month. At this time, Renekton looked at Chopper using a silver needle to bleed himself, and he still felt a little conflicted in his heart. After all, Chopper was not a member of their race. I still had some grudges in my heart. But looking at Chopper's skillful skills, Renekton didn't say much, but actively cooperated with Chopper's treatment. After all, this was the chief's order. He couldn't disobey it. I saw Chopper inserting the needle, and the blood slowly flowed out from the silver needle. The blood at this time was no longer bright red, but the purple of the datura flower. This is the blood of the person who was hit by the datura flower. The deeper the poisoning, the purpler the blood will be, until finally the blood turns black. Of course, the moment the blood turns black, it basically declares death. When Chopper went to Renekton for the first injection, he discovered that the toxins formed by the datura flowers seemed to be receding at an alarming speed. Starting from his neck, the silver needle slowly flowed in the direction of the needle. Renekton did not expect that the thing that looked like a deer in front of him had such a technique. So superb. The next time is the time for the slug to perform. It's still the same method, put the slug on the patient's wound. Because the slug has spiritual communication with Chopper. So even if Chopper doesn't speak, the slug I also knew what to do next. I was poisoned very deeply, so the treatment time was relatively long. But from the moment the slug began to suck the remaining toxin, the old man was already full of surprise. He did not expect that this was what he saw in front of him. A group of people can really cure the poison of datura flowers. This is the flower of hell from hell. He has been poisoned for several months. In this tribe, being poisoned by datura flowers means that death. As early as a few months ago, he had already settled his funeral arrangements. But in fact, he was very unwilling in his heart. After all, his wishes had not been realized, and his lofty ambitions had not been realized. In this way, he got the mandala. The poison of the flower. In his opinion, this is God's punishment for him. His hands are covered with blood. Although those are the blood of foreigners. Okay, old man, you're fine. Chopper now took out bandages and gauze to bandage Renekton's recent wound and said. What? All right, Renekton's eyes were full of shock at this time. In just a few minutes, the datura flower toxin that had troubled him for more than half a year was cured by the kid in front of him. Although he didn't believe it, the man who had recovered to health his skin seemed to tell him that all this was true. He glanced at his wound that had been bandaged. Renekton said nothing and turned away. The guard who had been standing aside looked a little embarrassed. After all, these to them, people are all benefactors. But the attitude of leader Renekton is indeed not good. Sorry, distinguished guests, Mr. Renekton has this kind of character. The guard touched his head, and then said what he said in embarrassment. After saying this, he followed the old man and left. At this time, Bayou's Mangekyo Sherinon had been opened. In fact, he had already checked it just now. The situation of the old man. The old man was indeed much stronger than the average dwarf tribesman. What surprised him was that this old man was also a devil fruit user. This was the first devil fruit user he had encountered in this tribe. Thinking of this, it is not so strange for Bayou to think about the Halashi prison before. After the old man left, the remaining dwarves were relatively normal. Basically, they would say thank you after being treated. He spent another day in treatment. The treatment lasted quite a long time today, so almost all the dwarves who had been poisoned by datura flower poison had been cured. At night, the female chief came to the residence of several people and asked the situation. In fact, there are spies watching them every day. The female chief naturally knows what they are doing every day, but she still has to do it. After all, they are distinguished guests, and they still have to be polite. At this time, the attitude of the female chief has changed from before. It's different. After all, they have left too many tribesmen in the past 2 days. For the female chief and the entire dwarf tribe, they are benefactors. The dwarf tribe has been a race with clear grudges since ancient times. Since Straw Hat, if a group of people is kind to them, then the Straw Hats will be their honored guests. Thank you all for your hard work over the past 2 days. We all see it. As for the conditions we promised you before, we will naturally do the same. Deliver on your promises. After that, the captain took out a token from his pocket. The token was only the size of a palm, with some symbols that Bayou didn't recognize engraved on it. The female chief continued, "This is my exclusive token. See you. This token is equivalent to meeting me and having absolute power in this tribe. Of course, if you want to enter the foundry, this token will be your pass. All the techniques you want can be learned there." When the female chief said this, even Bayou was moved. If it is true as the female chief said, then this token is too awesome. "Then thank you." Chief Luffy took the token and glanced at the words on it. Sure enough, he couldn't understand it. After taking a look, he handed the token to Bayou. He didn't want to care about these things. Wouldn't it be nice for him to be a hands-off shopkeeper? Anyway, with Bayou here, he doesn't have to worry at all. Bayou will definitely handle everything. Speaking of which, without Bayou, they might not have gone so smoothly this time. Let alone become the honored guests of this tribe. After all these were explained, the chief left. She had given the best things she could to the Straw Hats. This was repayment for her, and from her observations in the past few days and her own direct analysis, the Straw Hats in front of her, he is not a bad person. He will not bring danger to her tribe. It is strange to say that every time she sees Bayou, she will think of an old friend. Their temperaments are very similar, and even the absolute confidence in their eyes is so, generally the same. "We haven't seen each other for many years. You ungrateful person, where have you gone? You promised to pick me up. I've been waiting for you for 50 years. No one knew that the female chieftain who left the residence of the Straw Hats would fall into memories. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats." Author, Super Red. Chapter 348. In the room, Bayou looked at the token and felt happy. With this token, the Straw Hat Pirates can definitely become stronger. But before that, we have to pick up the group of people on the boat. They have been here for 2 days. I don't know what is going on the boat, but I heard from the dwarves that the night demon will not leave the forest, even the giants. It was not time to leave the forest, so Bayou felt relieved. The people on the ship still have some fighting ability. Unless there are a few generals, they won't be able to do anything. Go to bed early today. Every day I will bring everyone here on the boat so that they can come and observe the dwarfs' technology," Bayou said while looking at everyone. But there was no need for him to say this. After all, Chopper and Luffy were the type to fall asleep next to each other in bed. No, they just lay down on the bed and fell asleep as soon as they finished eating. Bayou looked at Luffy's sleeping posture and was speechless for a while. "Let's sleep too." Robin looked at Bayou softly and said. There was no words all night. Everyone got up very early the next day. After all, when there was business, Robin would wake everyone up in advance. Otherwise, given Luffy's character, he would probably wake up very early. They would not wake up until noon. After saying hello to the female chief, several people set out on their way back. They had made marks before, and after asking the female chief for instructions, Lilam became their guide. Although there was a mark on the way here, 2 days have passed and they don't know if the mark is still there. If the mark is gone, they may really get lost in this strange forest. So it would be best to find Lilam as their guide. Lilam is very familiar with this generation. She is a scout of the dwarf tribe. The few people quickly walked out of the tribe. Fortunately, they had set up before the mark was still there, which also saved them a lot of time. After walking for more than an hour, several people walked out of the forest, but when Lilam saw the ship, she could only watch silently. He could not walk out of the forest. This was their ancestral motto and something engraved in their bones. In the end, they decided that Lilam would wait where he was. They called the crew and then returned to the dwarf tribe together. On the sunny in the distance, this at the meeting, Usopp was looking into the forest with his telescope. This was what he had been doing for the past 2 days, so that he could see Bayou and the others come back as soon as possible. Although they had food and drink on the ship, they had not been able to. It's still very uncomfortable to stay on the ship. Besides, it's been 2 days since Bai-Fei Luffy and the others went in, and there is no news. They will inevitably be a little worried. They had a meeting last night. If they haven't come back today, a second team will be sent to look for it. The moment they walked out of the forest, they were discovered by Usopp. They are back. They are all back. There seems to be no trace of the battle. It seems that the forest is very safe, Usopp said after carefully observing a few people. This is too important for a coward like him. He is very afraid of unknown things. Now it seems that everything is normal. Are Bayou and the others back? Nami said after hearing Usopp's call on the deck. As a navigator, she is the most confused now. The compass in her hand has not left her hand in the past 2 days, but it has been swinging randomly. As if something was interfering with the normal operation of the compass. Bayou and the others got closer and closer, and finally got on the boat. How about it? Did anyone have any strange things happen on the ship, or encounter any strange creatures? Bayou asked as soon as he came to the ship. After all, he didn't know whether the night demon had ever visited the Sunny. No, everything has been normal in the past 2 days, there has been no movement. It has been like this since you entered the forest. There is no wind or wave even on the sea, Nami replied. She didn't know why Bayou suddenly said that. It seemed like something happened to them. What, did you encounter anything strange after entering the forest? Nami asked doubtfully. Then Bayou told everyone on the boat everything that happened after they entered the forest. Everyone was a little doubtful at this moment, but this was what Bayou said, and he obviously would not lie to them. And Luffy has already gone in to look for something to eat. Sanji, is lunch ready? I'm so hungry. Although the dwarf food is also delicious, it's still a lot worse than the food you make. So what are you going to do next? Jinbei came to a few people and said, obviously he also wanted to go in and see what was going on inside. What I mean is that we all go in to repair and renovate. There should not be much food, water, and other necessities on the ship. We also need supplies. The dwarves are a good choice. Don't we also need to know what this island is like? What's going on? Bayou said while looking at everyone. After some discussion, everyone decided that Eniro and Brook would stay and guard the Sunny. After all, it was obviously not possible for no one to stay. Then the Straw Hats walked directly towards the forest. But when they came to the place where they had just parted with Lilam, they did not see Lilam, and Chu Feng also opened the kaleidoscope Blood Will Eye to search for traces of Lilam. It was a pity that there were dozens of people in the area. Lilam was nowhere to be seen. How's it going? Are you nearby? Robin saw the state of Bayou's eyes at this time and knew that Bayou was using his ability. Bayou shook his head. No, maybe he has gone back early. It doesn't matter that we have left a mark, plus we have walked 2 this time. He should be able to find the dwarf tribe based on his memory. He is still very confident about this. But what worries him is that Lilam may not have left by herself, because there are footprints of several people here, and judging from the footprints it doesn't seem to be a dwarf. Now he can only pray that nothing will happen to Lilam. After all, Lilam came here for them. Bayou, who was walking in front, thought of this and couldn't help but speed up his pace. Robin. Hui also discovered the clues, and his inner guess was probably not as simple as Bayou said. Soon, everyone came to the tribe, because Bayou had the chief's token, and the guards knew them, so they naturally didn't stop them. But right there after they met the female chief, Bayou's guess was verified. Lilam did not come back. It seems that this girl Lilam is in serious danger, the female chief said after listening to what Bayou and others said. Chief, do you know what's going on? Is there a hostile force in your tribe? Bayou thought of this immediately. Obviously, the place just now was not the work of some ferocious beast. Bayou can be sure of this. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 349. At this time, the chief glanced at the clothes placed beside her. Bayou recognized this piece of clothing. It was the clothes Lilam had worn before. Lilam may be in trouble this time, the female chief sighed and said. Suddenly there was a noisy sound outside the palace. Chief Renekton, you can't go in. The chieftain is meeting with important guests inside. The two guards stopped the aggressive Renekton and said. However, how could their strength be Renekton's opponent? With a wave of Renekton's hand, the two guards who looked relatively strong were thrown away. Flying out. Pushing open the door of the hall, Renekton walked upright in front of several people, and then knelt down on one knee. Chief, please forgive me for being unreasonable, but I heard that Lilam was captured by the giants. I asked the chief to give me 10 dwarf elites to rescue Lilam. Renekton's tone was decisive and unquestionable. The female chief looked at Renekton, who was also gray-haired, and sighed. Mr. Lay, I know you are very anxious after Lilam was caught. After all, you watched her grow up, but don't forget that I am her mother. I am also very anxious, but this is not just for emotion. At that time, you also know that the strength of the giants is not something we can compete with now. I can't let my people die just because she is my daughter. When the female chief said this, tears were rolling in her eyes. Why didn't he want to save Lilam? As a mother, she desperately hoped that she could immediately send troops to rescue her baby daughter, but as a chief, the ruler of a tribe, she can't do this. She can't let her tribe take risks because of her own selfish desires. If this is the case, I am willing to go alone. Hearing what the female chief said, Renekton said after being silent for a moment. She had watched Lilam grow up since she was a child. To him, Lilam was his granddaughter, and Renekton had never had one in his life. After finding his partner, when he was lonely, he only had the young Lilam by his side. He had already regarded Lilam as his closest relative. Now that Lilam was arrested, he certainly could not sit back and wait for death, but he is the leader of a tribe after all, so he still has to report to the chief before setting off. After all, there is a high probability of misfortune there. Bayou looked at the posture of the two people and already guessed something. Lilam is captured by the giants, and the giants may have some story with the dwarfs. Lilam was captured because of us, so let us go with the old leader. Luffy, who had been silent until now, can speak now. But Bayou had already guessed that Luffy would say this. He is so warm-hearted that he will definitely save people. This, the female chief is still a little uneasy. After all, in her opinion, the current giant race is too strong and has several ability users, which cannot be dealt with by ordinary people. If the chief is worried about our safety, then there is no need. Our strength may be beyond your imagination. Bayou glanced at the hesitant female chief and said. He had already guessed what the female chief was thinking now. After all, they were easily caught by the female chief's design before, so in the female chief's heart, there the force is not high, even a little low, but the medical skills are great. Now that everyone has said so, it's time to work. If you really can give birth to a daughter, then the dwarf tribe must express your gratitude. The female chief looked at the few people gratefully and said. In her opinion, there is no need for the Straw Hats to do anything. At this point, after all, they are just travelers in the final analysis. Then let Mr. Renekton take you with him. Even though Renekton is old now, he was a good fighter back then. After bidding farewell to the female chief, several people walked out of the palace. Renekton could not wait any longer, but he still had to explain clearly to these outsiders. In fact, in his heart, he did not want these people to come together. After all, I feel that these people probably don't have much ability, and they might even be held back if they really fight. At this time, Bayou was still very confused. After all, the giants were huge. They had seen it when they came to this island before, but if such a big figure really appeared in the place before Lilam, it's impossible not to discover it. At that moment, I also asked old Renekton. It turns out that the giants have special abilities. Strong people can cultivate wisdom and make their bodies smaller than human beings, but their power is amazing. This is also the secret method of the giants. Of course, only the giants can do it. Arrive. Almost all giants have this ability. Hearing this, Bayou thought in his mind, isn't the ability of this giant clan the same as Akimichi Koji in Naruto? It's huge. Of course, he couldn't say this, after all, only he knew this. Several people just followed Renekton on the road. After all, they didn't know where the giant tribe was. After walking for about 5 minutes, Renekton came to a house and opened the door. The stove in the house was burning brightly. There are a lot of dwarves inside building something at this time. It seems that there are many types of weapons, and each weapon looks very sophisticated. It seems to me that none of you have any weapons. Come and pick one out. Renekton walked to the door of the weapons depot and took out all his weapons. There were many kinds of weapons. Well, actually we don't need weapons, we are fruit ability users. As he spoke, Luffy made his hand huge, and then waved it in the sky, as if to show his ability. Seeing this, Renekton was a little shocked. After all, in their tribe, although there are people with this kind of ability, but rarely. Are you all people with fruit abilities? Renekton said as he glanced at the Straw Hats in front of him. No, but we all have our own weapons and we take them with good intentions. Actually, Bayou and the others are a little bit disdainful of the things Renekton brought out. Although these are sophisticated equipment and may fetch a lot of money when sold outside, they still disdain them at this level. However, this also allowed Bayou to see the abilities of these dwarf craftsmen. Everything they made was very good. Unfortunately, the raw materials were not very good, so the upper limit of what they could make was relatively low. Of course, for Bayou, it's nothing. He has good materials. He just needs to exchange them in the system. What he needs is this kind of dwarf craftsman. After Lilam is rescued, he may be able to ask the female chief to arrange the best craftsman. Maybe build him a weapon. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 350. Seeing that the Straw Hats didn't choose any equipment, Renekton wasn't angry. He didn't know that they were all ability users at first. At first, he thought that maybe Bayou was the most special one. After all, Bayou's temperament was different from the others. After all this was done, Renekton put on his armor. The armor looked to be quite old, and it was densely covered with traces of battle. Seeing this, even Bayou was moved. Although he didn't know what the old man had gone through, there should be many legendary stories in his life. The strength of the giants is very strong. Once we set off, there is no turning back. I reiterate again, it is still too late to leave now. Renekton looked at Bayu's group and said, "Old man, since we have decided to go, we will not back down. Don't worry about this. To be honest, we pirates are not greedy for life and afraid of death." Hearing what Luffy said, Renekton was obviously stunned for a moment. He didn't know they were pirates at first. Pirate. Hearing these two words made Renekton a little stunned, but he quickly realized that now was not the time for him to recall the glory of the past. After everything was ready, the Straw Hats and Renekton set out on their journey. Along the way, they saw many rare and exotic plants, but most of them were poisonous. The one that surrounded the dwarf tribe the most was the datura flower. Strangely enough, this datura flower happened to surround the dwarf tribe. Speaking of which, this datura flower seems to be protecting the dwarf tribe. Although it is poisonous, it does ensure that the dwarf tribe is not invaded by the outside world. Bayu is now thinking that maybe the reason why the giants did not attack the dwarf tribe may have a lot to do with the datura flower. After all, he understands that the datura flower is a common trouble on this island, so he becomes a member of the Straw Hats. When it was said that datura flower poison could be cured, the dwarves would be so shocked. Several people walked through the forest, crossing rivers and hills. About half a day later, when everyone came to a place with dense trees, Renekton suddenly stopped and said with a serious face, "We are here. This is the territory of the giant tribe." Hearing Renekton say this, as soon as he said that, everyone looked up and looked into the distance. In the distance, there are indeed tall-looking buildings. Compared with the dwarf tribe, the difference is that the buildings there look very rough and not as refined as those of the dwarves. However, each building is very huge, and it's worthy of the giants to say that. So what to do next? At this time, Luffy squatted on the ground and looked at Renekton and said, "After all, Renekton is the commander of their operation, and only Renekton knows about the giants. Wait, only when night is about to fall will we have a chance. The giants' eyesight will be very poor at night, and then we will have a chance to sneak in. In fact, Bayu is planning to attack directly. After all, he has the strength, but since Lilum is still in their hands, if they really attack rashly, Lilum will probably suffer a serious blow. That will they had to try. After all, they were here to save people, not to provoke an all-out war between the giants and dwarves." As night fell gradually, a group of people were already ready, waiting until the first flames rose. Renekton directed everyone to sneak in quietly. Just as they arrived at the door, everyone saw two guards. The two guards looked like ordinary humans, but their heads were much taller than ordinary people. At least 2.5 meters tall. Wow, they are indeed giants. They can be more than 2 meters tall in this form. Usopp couldn't help complaining. He was only 1.76 meters tall. But when he saw the two giant guards standing at the door, Renekton hesitated. Damn it, how could it be the two of them? Hearing Renekton's words, Bayu was stunned for a moment. Then he opened his Mangekyo blood chakra eye, observed the surrounding environment, and also checked the situation of the two guards. What surprised him was that these two people were obviously not ordinary people. Since they have domineering power, and the intensity of the domineering power is not low, it also shows that these two people must be very capable. We may not be able to get in. If there are those two brothers standing guard, we can't get in. Renekton said with a sigh. Obviously he was very frustrated at this time, as if he was complaining that God had played a big joke on him. But even if he said this, Bayu didn't want to give up just like that. They had traveled a long way. If he gave up here, he would not be able to be saved. Lilum also said that his weapon building plan would be ruined. Before Renekton could tell his next plan, Bayu walked out in a blink of an eye. This move also shocked Renekton. Boy, whatever you do, you'll expose us. But when he said this, it was already too late, because Bayu had already walked out. The domineering power of seeing and hearing, combined with the domineering power of the Overlord, formed a barrier on Bayu's body. In this way, Bayu came there quietly next to the so-called two brothers. The two brothers, who seemed to have sensed something, turned back directly, and a pair of strange eyes were watching them. Tsukuyomi made the two men who were afraid of Renekton fall directly into their own illusions in just a moment. Bayu waved to the people in the grass, indicating that he had done it. Seeing this scene, the Straw Hats, naturally accustomed to it. "Let's go, we've taken care of the guards," Robin said, looking at Renekton, who was already stunned. At this time, Renekton was extremely shocked. He didn't know what the young man had just done to the two brothers. They were the higher brothers, high-end warriors of the giants. In that era of turbulent wars, the higher brothers were also powerful figures on the battlefield. He didn't know why these two were the guards today. After all, their military exploits were outstanding and they should have become leader-level figures long ago. How could he be used as a guard? But thinking about it, Renekton believed that Lilam was captured by the giants. The reason why the Heil brothers came to see the gate was because they knew that someone would come today. Rescue people, they are just waiting for their prey to take the bait. They are very capable, and my monthly study won't keep them trapped for long. We must solve it quickly, Bayu said when he saw several people who had come to them. Let's work separately. Seeing and hearing Se Haki should allow us to find Lilam. And they were divided into 4 groups, and the captain of each group was someone who had seen Lilam himself. Only in this way could they find Lilam faster. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 351. Renekton was followed by Bayu. He was even more curious about the man in front of him now. He didn't know how Bayu did it just now. From his perspective, he only saw Bayu go up and look at the two brothers head on, and then the two brothers stood still. Wow, this is simply amazing. Seemingly aware of Renekton's surprise, Bayu said, Leader Lei, don't be surprised, that's just one of my abilities. After saying this, Bayu slowly spread his domineering power to the giant tribe. Everywhere. Not to mention, this tribe is really big, probably several times bigger than the dwarves. Bayu's knowledge and color haki cannot be completely covered by several people, and there is an enemy. Since Bayu cannot detect the internal situation, it seems to be interfered by something, and there seems to be some kind of power that is fighting against his knowledge and color haki. This got him interested. Unexpectedly, since the giants have such a strong person, it is no wonder that the female chief had such an expression after learning that Lilam was captured. If it is such a strong person, maybe the dwarves really have no chance. But even though they are very curious, they must find and rescue Lilam before considering other things. After all, rescuing Lilam is their top priority this time. Continue to explore the world of knowledge and domineering, and finally Bayu still found the place where Lilam was imprisoned. Found it. After saying that, Bayu said that he would lead the way. The night here is the same as the dwarves. There are very few people outside. And these giants seem to be the same as Renekton said. Their eyesight is very poor at night. There are so many of them. Since no one noticed people walking around in the tribe, they soon came to a very tall building. This is where Lilam's aura comes from. Bayu pointed at the building in front of him and said. But the door of the building was closed at this time. Renekton looked at Bayu and said, how should we get in? Bayu looked at Ace, who was standing next to him, and said, Ace, you should be fine. After saying that, he made a way for Ace. In the next second, Ace turned into a ball of fire and burned in. He quietly opened the door and several people entered the building smoothly. This was surprising to Lake. Dunn was shocked again. Although he knew that these people were all ability users, he had never seen this kind of ability before. There were no natural ability users on this island, so Ace's ability did not exist in Thunder. For Renekton, that was really a miraculous skill. After approaching this prison, Renekton was filled with emotion and touched the walls here. This prison is specially used to imprison us dwarves. I have also been imprisoned. He was imprisoned here. For some reason, Renekton suddenly sighed, maybe he had come to his sad place. During the next journey, Renekton seemed to be very familiar with this place. There were no soldiers holding hands here at night, which also made Bayou when others arrived, they were surprised. I have to say that these giant tribesmen are really weird, and their thoughts are completely different from ordinary people. But maybe this has something to do with the fact that there are no people with natural abilities on this island. After all, if there is no key to the gate of this prison, it is impossible to open it from the outside. Of course, it is very simple to open it from the inside. They may have regarded this place as an absolutely safe place where no one can invade. Under the leadership of Renekton, several people walked all the way towards the prison. Walking deep, thanks to the dwarves' good eyesight at night, otherwise, a player like Frankie would have no choice but to hit the wall in this place where he can't see his fingers. That's right, there are not even lights here. After walking for a few minutes, a few people came to a cell. What surprised Bayou was that since these cells were also made of sea tower stone, although they looked much simpler than the dwarf cells, they were indeed sea towers. For those with abilities, this stone building is completely impossible to break through. Perhaps this is also one of the giant's trump cards. After all, even if someone has the ability to break in, it must be only those with abilities who can do it, and the ability user is restrained by the sea tower stone, which is equivalent to a dead end. But what they don't know is that Bayou is not a devil fruit ability user. He has absolute power to open this prison. Amaterasu, Black Flame. No Moji, Bayou directly activated his ultimate move and burned the door of the cell. Inside the door, Lilam was indeed inside, but she seemed to be unconscious now, and there were many scars on her body, as if she had been tortured. Lilam, wake up, we are here to save you. Lilam. The first time he saw Lilam, Renekton rushed forward. After seeing that Lilam had fallen asleep at this time, Renekton felt heartbroken. After picking up Lilam, he faced Bayou said let's leave quickly, I'm afraid we will be discovered if it's too late. Although the giants have poor eyesight at night, they still have fighting ability. After that, he led everyone back the same way. They walked on flat ground in this darkness. Soon, several people walked out of the prison. But at this moment, an alarm broke the tranquility of the night. Hearing this sound after the alarm, Renekton immediately lost his composure. This is a warning to the giants that they are facing an enemy. We may have been discovered and must leave here as soon as possible. At the same time, several people who had split up before also came back. Of course, this was also because Bayou used his telekinesis ability to inform them that they had been found. Everyone headed towards the way they came. And when they came to the door, suddenly two huge figures appeared. They were none other than the higher brothers who were directly read by Bayou. Unexpectedly, since their willpower is so strong, Tsukuyomi can only have such a short-term effect on them. Seeing the two people waking up, Bayou also smiled. If you can't move your muscles and bones for a few days, let's take the two brothers for surgery. At this moment, Renekton put down Lilam and said to everyone, you wait for Lilam to leave quickly. They are very strong. I will break up the rear. As he spoke, he pulled out the saber he carried with him. But it was obvious that he was serious and fearful, which was caught by Bayou. But what moved Bayou was that even so, he still decided to stay and stop the two brothers, and couldn't help but let go. Bayou was a little moved. Old man, leave this place to me. You and my crew members wait for me outside first, and I will come and break up. Bayou confidently stretched his muscles and said. But Renekton wanted to say something else, but was interrupted by Bayou. Don't you believe me? Don't forget how I made them fall into the illusion just now. It seems that they are vulnerable. After saying that, he looked back at Renekton. At this time, Drops of blood flowed out of Bayu's eyes, which was the state of the Mangekyo blood will eyes fully opened. The two brothers in front of him were of extraordinary strength, and he could not be careless. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 352. After watching everyone leave, Bayu stood there, waiting for the arrival of the two of them. What surprised Bayu was that since the two brothers in front of him could also speak human language, instead of saying that, it would be better to say that their language was the same as the dwarves, and they were the pronunciation of the human kingdom. Different from the timid nature of the dwarves, the giants did not react too much after seeing Bayu, but there was a trace of contempt in their eyes. Humans, this is not the place you should come, and you cannot save the dwarf women, the slightly fatter man among the two said. After hearing this, Bayu just smiled and said, "Oh? Really? Originally, the affairs between your two clans were none of my business, but there is no way I have a warm-hearted and nosy captain." In the distance, a group of Straw Hat pirates were retreating towards the dwarf tribe. At this time, Luffy was running with Lilam on his back and suddenly sneezed. Maybe I caught a cold because I slept without a quilt last night. Luffy was thinking like this. What he didn't know was that Bayu was actually talking about him behind his back. It seems that you are determined to go against our giant clan. Seeing Bayu's calm and composed look, the two dwarfs were already furious. You know, on this island, their giants can be said to be the kings here, and people from other tribes have to surrender. They, although the dwarves back then could indeed be on an equal footing with them, that was already many years ago. So what? I really want to know what you can do to me at this time. Bayu's eyes have changed. The originally dark black pupils have now turned into the appearance of the kaleidoscope blood will eyes. Those eyes are. Obviously Brother Hire has just suffered a loss, so for those pair of eyes just now the pupils who let themselves fall into the illusion were still a little afraid, but the next scene also surprised Bayu. Because the Hire brothers actually took out a piece of black cloth from behind themselves and covered their eyes. Good guy, this intelligence is really not low, since you know how to cover your eyes. This move is obviously to avoid the illusion produced by the Mangekyo blood will eye. Unexpectedly, after only one fight, the two brothers have discovered the secret of the Mangekyo. However, this does not affect Chu Feng's action. After all, the illusion of the Mangekyo blood will eye, it is just one of the abilities. The most powerful thing about the blood will eye is that it can spy on the enemy's movements and react before that. In front of him, the Hire brothers have already rushed towards Bayu. It seems that they are blindfolded and have no effect at all. Affected their movements, Bayu speculated that they should have other means to detect things. Could it be Roger's ability to listen to all things? Of course, this idea only appeared in Bayu's mind for a moment and then disappeared. His two brothers have not yet reached Roger's level. Obviously this guess is not very valid. And the following battle also made Bayu look at these two brothers with admiration. Their cooperation was very good. Although they attacked from different angles, their tacit understanding was as good as one person. The two punched Bayu from different angles, and their speed was very fast. If Chu Feng hadn't been blessed by the kaleidoscope blood will eye, faced with such a violent attack from the two of them, they might really be hit. Seeing that their attack was ineffective, the two of them looked at each other, and then a magical scene happened. Their body shapes began to change, and the aura around them also changed. After a while, the two people who were still in human form turned into two giant wolves. Animal type ability Fruit Bearer. Seeing the changes in front of him, Bayu was stunned. He didn't expect that since the two brothers were ability users and were of the animal type, this could also explain why they were so fast just now. After all, they were wolves. That speed, can you slow down? His domineering power was turned on, and there were a lot of footsteps in the distance, probably a lot of them. This made Bai, who was about to take action seriously, give up the attack. He was not originally going to get entangled with the two brothers here. The purpose is to cover the retreat of the large army, and counting the time and their speed, they have retreated a long way now, and the giants will not be able to catch up for a while. But if they don't teach the two brothers in front of them a lesson, it couldn't be justified. At that moment, Shiroyu's Mangekyo blood ring eye opened again, this time not using illusions, but Susanoo. A huge phantom transformed from domineering appeared out of the sky, and it was no bigger than the giants who had turned into giants. Poor. Seeing that Bai had this ability, the two brothers were also confused. What was this huge ability? Moreover, the man's whole body was obviously domineering. Since he could develop his domineering to this extent. At this time, the two brothers the people already had the intention of retreating. Originally, they planned to hold off the opponent until the large army arrived and take it down in one fell swoop. But now the large army has not arrived yet. They are naturally afraid of facing this kind of monster. Sheikh, what are you doing? It seems that he felt the change in his younger brother's aura, and his elder brother Qingtian also reminded him. As the vanguard of the giant tribe, they cannot be timid. As soon as he finished speaking, Bai took action, and the huge shadow thought about the two wolves. The punch blasted out, and the huge force directly smashed a big hole in the ground. Seeing the ground that was hit just now, the two brothers were a little dumbfounded. What kind of destructive power was this? If this punch was really hit by him, if it's on him, then they probably have to explain it here today. Seeing that his punch missed, Bai was not angry. After all, these two wolves were known for their speed. If they were really knocked down by his punch, then it really doesn't make sense. Susanoo Kagato Mikato's black flame appeared again, but this time it didn't go directly to the two wolves, but turned into a bow and arrow. The arrowhead formed by black flames is wrapped in black flames. Seeing this scene, the higher brothers seemed to have seen some kind of miracle. Their eyes were wide and round. They knew that if the arrow hit, they might not be able to trap them even in werewolf form. Now I can only see if I can use my own speed to dodge this attack. However, Bai's Mangekyo blood will eye is no joke. The reason why he uses this move is because it can very well restrain speed-oriented enemies like the two of them. Phew, the arrow came out of his hand. The speed of the seemingly huge arrow was extremely amazing. With the blessing of the blood will eye, the hit rate of this arrow was extremely high, because Bai locked all possible escape directions for Qingtian. Boom, there was a loud noise, and the one of the two wolves fell to the ground. The terrible black flames were still burning Qingtian's fur, and dark brown blood flowed outwards. After seeing that he succeeded, Bai stopped staying. After all, the large army had already arrived. If he didn't leave, he might not be able to leave later. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 353. What is that? The giant tribe's reinforcements also saw Shiroyu Susanoo not far away. There seems to be someone standing on top of it. Is it a human being? Everyone who saw this spectacle was surprised. But now is not the time for them to discuss this. Just now they have felt that the higher brothers have transformed into wolves. They still know the higher brothers very well and are very strong. If they don't encounter a strong enemy, they will not use the fruit ability. And the human on the huge phantom just now is probably the culprit of this attack on the giants. Speed up, you must take him down, the leader said, an unusually strong-looking man. The man was wearing a tiger skin, and his hair looked like a Super Saiyan, standing straight up. However, by the time a few people arrived, Bai had long disappeared. Only the two brothers were left at the scene, and the scene burned by black flames. What's going on? Where is the human that I just saw? Ran Qingtian's eyes were full of murderous intent at this time, and the regret in his hands was already dying. Under the burning of black flames, even those with animal-type fruit abilities whose vitality was different from ordinary people could not withstand it. What's more, it was burned by the black flames. The black flame Amaterasu blessed by Zonangu. The tiger man obviously felt something was wrong. What happened to regret? The tiger man came to the two brothers out of curiosity and said. The retreating Bayou naturally didn't care about these things. After all, he didn't have a good impression of the giants. He kidnapped a woman in broad daylight. What kind of good person could do that? Is it something? No, they are giants and cannot be counted as humans. But as Bayou walked, he found that he seemed to be lost. This road did not seem to be the road he had passed before, because Renekton had led the way before, so there are no markings. The forest here is too dense and tall. People who are not familiar with the terrain here can easily get lost. Oops, where is this place? Since I, Bayou, can get lost, damn it, at this moment, Bayou couldn't help but think of a person, Sauron. If Sauron were here now, I'm afraid he would never be able to get out of this forest in his life. Bayou looked at the dark night. How about resting here tonight? It should be easier to find the way during the day. Thinking like this, Bayou directly found a high number, and then sat on it. Late at night, a sound made Bayou alert. When he lowered his head, he saw green flames shining brightly in the forest. The fire seemed not to be real. The sexual fire, because no one around it was ignited by it. Just when Bayou wanted to take a closer look at what this thing was, the fire suddenly looked in the direction of Bayou. When he turned his head, the flames on the front, it looks like a terrifying skeleton, ferocious and terrifying. This makes Bayou's first reaction is the night devil that the dwarves mentioned before. But this way, why does it look so much like Brooke? Could it be that Brooke didn't look at the boat, and he ran out to play, pretending to be a ghost here? Thinking of this, Bayou jumped directly out of the tree. Seeing the man in front of him suddenly jump down, the skull was startled and quickly stepped back. This was his first time. I encountered this situation once. I have been on this island for decades, and there has never been a race that I am not afraid of when I see it, and even deliberately come to me. Gurgling, the blue skull made a strange sound. Bayou couldn't understand the sound, but he knew that it seemed to be intimidating him. Aren't you the night demon? They said. Bayou came to the blue skull and looked up and down at the scary-looking skull. Of course, maybe this thing is really scary to others. After all, the skull can fly. Who wouldn't be scared to see blue light in this dark night? But Bayou is different. Who knows that their pirate group really has such a weirdo? Brooke also likes to wander around at night. I'm thinking, maybe the skulls have strange habits and like to go out for a walk at night. But seeing that the skull ignored him, and instead continued to make a grunting sound in place. Bayou couldn't help it. Good guy. Didn't you just ignore him? Then he slapped the skull directly on the face. I'm asking you something, I'm asking you something, I'm asking you something, what's your attitude? The sudden slap stunned the blue skull. It has lived on this island of giants for so many years. How has it ever encountered such grievances? You know, he is the king of the night. But what's going on with this guy in front of him? At that moment, his first reaction was to run away. He couldn't afford to offend the monster in front of him. But would Bayou just let him go? He was already lost in the dark night, and he finally fell asleep. It was caught and awakened by this thing. It was obviously impossible to just let it go. At that moment, the kaleidoscope blood will eye was opened directly, and then a ball of black flame appeared out of thin air around the blue skull. The sudden black flames made the skull feel very scared. Although this was the first time it had seen this kind of black flames, it felt the aura of death very clearly. It knew that as long as it took another step forward, this black flames would probably it will kill it. Run, keep running, why don't you run? I thought you were a skull and weren't afraid of fire. This is actually what Bayou got from Brook, because Brook was also afraid of his black flames, so Bayou speculated that the blue skull in front of him might also be afraid of this thing. Seeing the reaction of the skull at this time, Bayou knew, he was right, this thing is really afraid of black flames. Bayou slowly walked to the skull's head and slapped him twice. How? I'm scared. Didn't I run very fast before? Then there were 2 more slaps. Oh, don't hit, brother, I know I was wrong. This sudden change made Bayou jump. Holy shit, talking skull. Bayou never expected it. He originally thought that this thing couldn't speak, but now it seems that he was wrong. Moreover, this voice is a woman's voice, and it is also very beautiful. This is the most important thing. But when he thought, doesn't the one on their ship also talk? And he seems to like to make weird laughs too. Now that you can talk, it's easy. There was an intriguing evil smile on Bayou's face. The skull couldn't help but shuddered when he saw the expression on Bayou's face. Now tell me, what are you? Are you the night devil they call you, and do you know where I am now, and how should I return to the dwarf tribe?